Hello, I'm James Toy, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for KCRAR. You're about to watch one of our candidate interviews, an unfiltered, front row look at how those seeking office approach the issues that shape private property rights and the real estate industry as a whole. We share these conversations publicly so you can hear directly from the candidates, understand their positions in their words, and cast your vote with confidence. Well, very much appreciate that. And again, I know we've corresponded a little bit. I'm James Toy. I'm the SVP of Government Affairs for KCRAR, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues today. David, would you like to start us off and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's David. Sheri, nice to meet you. I own a real estate company here in Lee Summit, so I'm in your community. I've been here for about 25 years, and I'm currently the president of the Kansas City Regional Association of Realtors.
Sheri, I'm Jeff Carson. I'm the Director of Realtor Advocacy here at KCRAR. So welcome, and it's nice to meet you.
Thank you. You too.
And Sheri, we'd love to learn a little bit about you while you're seeking office and maybe a little bit about your professional background.
Absolutely. My professional background, just so you know, comes from a variety of things, public health primarily, public policy, and implementing those public policies more recently because I want everyone to have access to the opportunities and the information that's out there in a nutshell. I tell folks I went to Mizzou. That's where my son is. He thought he wanted to go to KU, but absolutely not. Just because we're not paying out-of-state tuition. That's what my dad told me, and so I just passed it on down to him as well. And then I went to grad school in Minnesota, Minneapolis, because I was in love with Prince at the time. So, full transparency. So, and came back home because it was too cold. But I decided to run. I ran previously 2 years ago. I ran for city council and in my district and missed it by 153 votes. I decided one of the things that prompted me to run is because at the time it was 2024. There was a lot of opportunity, a lot of information, not just for homeowners, small business owners, everything. And that information to me was stuck. It wasn't being shared. It wasn't being disseminated to the community. And that's one of the things that I do in my personal life. That's what I do professionally is access information and try to share that so that other folks can propel forward as well. So I've been in Lee Summit since 2013, 2012 to be exact. And I have a son. And as I mentioned, he's in Mizzou now. He graduated from Lee Summit West, and I love it. I like the old things about it, and I like the new things about it. Right? Which is, if you live in Lee Summit, you know there's a struggle there. Just from a housing standpoint, I like the old houses, but I like the amenities that come with the new houses. I don't like the price tag that comes with the new houses, but I believe in access and options. And that's kind of what if you want to talk about my platform, that's kind of what my platform is. So when I lost last time, I think I won't say I lost, I gained information last time. The mayor appointed me to the Planning Commission, which opened my eyes up about all things development, real estate, ordinances, zoning, everything. Now, when I live in Bridlewood. When I moved into Bridlewood, I think they had finished all the phases at the time, but I was able to look at, how it had progressed over the years. My sister lives in Winterset, and so they built their house. So I was able to at least be part of that and understand the path that they took in Winterset. So at least on this side of the city, I'm quite familiar with kind of what goes on from a planning standpoint. Development, it opened my eyes for a couple of reasons. You all know what the housing situation is. We've got one group that's like, hey, we want to live here. That's one of the reasons we moved here. We can't afford it. We've got another group that says, we like it here. We don't want any new development. So it's kind of, we have to find a balance. It's just that simple. And we have to have options. So that's kind of how I came to run. I think, and it's not just, again, it's not just focused on real estate and housing, but it's important. Housing, affordable, attainable, the missing middle, that's what's thrown out there a lot. The other thing that I hear all the time is active adult. Now, I think I'm an active adult because I guarantee you that as soon as my kid comes out of Mizzou, I'm on my way out of, 40. I mean, seriously, I want him to come and stay with me for a little bit while he gets on his feet, gets a job, and that sort of thing.
Got to go. He's got to go.
That part. Then I need him to go, but I need him to have. But as a mom, as a helicopter mom, I need him to go somewhere close to me. I know that sounds weird. We lost his dad a couple years or so ago. So I'm like, you need to be close to me. But that's a struggle for that particular generation because they need to be able to afford those particular homes. Do they afford, $750,000? Absolutely not. He needs to work his way up. But we need to have somewhere for them to go, right? So that's my story. That's the best thing. And again, options. Now, some of those options could be apartments. My brother, FBI agent, lives in Lee Summit. He he has a house. His son graduated last year. And guess what? He downsized. And he downsized over to some of the apartments in Lee Summit over above McKeever's. So there's opportunity for everyone, I think. And he was just as happy not to have to do the lawn, to do anything, because he's on the road quite a bit. So that makes sense for him. It doesn't make sense for everybody else. But my biggest thing is options. So I know that was a long spiel for generally me, but that's
Sheri, I thought I was talking to a realtor. David, I don't know about you, but didn't she attainable, affordable, missing middle? I mean, she's throwing around all of our stuff like she's one of us. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm looking at my papers. Is she a realtor? I'm trying to check here.
We're going to sit in a real estate school next week, right?
I think so.
Well, here's the other thing. So I'm planning. One of the things that planning has done for me, we talk about zoning. And I look at, again, my basis was public health. And I think housing it factors into your public health, whether it's environmental and that sort of thing. So I look at those things, what's its zone now? And also, what are our citizens saying? What is the challenge? And I sit at every city council meeting, every single one for the last 3 years. And most of the time it's just me. Every now and then it's standing room only. And usually it's because there are residents there that say, we don't want this in our neighborhoods. It's the whole NIMBY thing. We don't want this type of development in our neighborhood, that sort of thing. But I think there's also a lot of misinformation there. So I think it will be my job to kind of move that chaos into calm. And I also work with the school district. And, when you want to create a development, when you want to look at that, let's look at, how many kids it's going to start putting into the schools. Most of the schools in Lee Summit are busting out at the seams anyway. So we need to have
to build that fourth high school soon enough, right? I mean, it's coming.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm dating myself.
Can I ask a couple of follow-up questions?
Sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I love this energy. It feels like those of us who are from this town, who call this place home, are struggling with it at times, what I call an identity crisis. Because, like you said, there's old Lee Summit, which we have to evolve. But it seems like the heartburn that I hear on the streets is it's just happening way too fast.
That part, yes, right? Yes.
And I get that part of that may be some infrastructural concerns, but I don't think that's what the typical Lee Summit resident is complaining about. They're not worried about the infrastructure. They don't like the way it looks because it changed overnight, the way it looked. And yet when you look at our strategic plan, we had a strategic plan that was built around that 10% multifamily number. And there's some debate whether that was supposed to be up to 10% or not to exceed 10% or to get us to 10%, kind of a debate. Exactly. Where do you feel that you fall in that conversation?
Right dead smack in the middle. And I say that because people moved here for a reason. I moved here in 2013 for a reason, right? The schools are fantastic. I like this side of town. I like being by the lake. I like, being close to the college, that sort of thing. But also, to be honest, I liked being near Summit Woods. I like that. I like being near the grocery store, that sort of thing. And I like the lot sizes here and that sort of thing. I am challenged with, and when I moved here, of course, their apartment situation wasn't there. The thing that I think most people, it did go up fast. But part of that, I think, is because the strategic plan was in place years ago. They just got to the point now where they're starting to build those things for whatever reason, financing, that sort of thing. So it seems, and perception is everything. It seems that, it's going up all at once. It's kind of like over on 50 and 291, I hadn't driven by there in a while. I had been here and I sit on the planning commission. I know Q39 is going there. I know Chick-fil-A is going there. The other day, I was like, oh my gosh, Chick-fil-A is going to open on the 26th. And it just seemed like it was there quickly. It's too much. So I think what we need to do is, yes, we did, the strategic plan was there. I think we have a new generation, even though we're only talking 10 years, that needs to be involved in developing the new charter and the new strategic plan, because there are some neighborhoods that are going to age out. I mean, it's just that simple. But I think after this latest round, there's enough conversation out there to kind of pace it, if you would. If that makes sense. I think we are probably right at that 10, 15%, however you want to look at it. I also think that we need to do a better a job of identifying what we mean by multifamily homes, right? Over by me in Longview, they have townhomes that I equate to row homes like on the East Coast. Nobody's buying those. I mean, they're not. For one, because if I'm going to be an active adult, I don't want all those stairs. I don't. There's like 3 or 4 floors over there. What I do want, what I'm hearing is, folks want active adult villas, again, somewhere maintenance provided, seniors, that sort of thing. And I always ask, I need an operational definition of a senior. Because I'm pretty sure I fall into both of those. But So you've got that. I just think we just need to talk. We need to offer, I always say from a planning commission, I am never going to be one that's going to step in the way of development. I don't believe in that. I don't want to be impede new business, none of that. But I also think that some things need to be in my backyard and some things don't. And I think we should have a say in that. And that's happening. It happened, to me in my backyard a couple of years or so ago. And I was like, nah, I don't like that. And many times I think developers are willing to go back to the table and say, make adjustments, and say, okay, we're not going to have 10 stories. We'll have, 20, we'll have, 4 stories and that sort of thing. And then there's a whole tax issue that comes into play too. So I'm sure I answered way too much of your question. I apologize.
No, you do not apologize. I love your willingness to share.
And Sheri, I appreciate you, again, your energy. I am the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Unified Government in Wyandotte County. So
okay.
everything, that's why you see me not, I know they want to build some football team or something wants to move over.
Right.
Yes, and that's going to be about a mile from my house, mile and a half away from my house. So yeah, so there's a lot of things going on. NIMBYism, you said all the buzzwords. I mean, I'm the one sitting here nodding because I know exactly what you're going through on a monthly basis. One of the questions that we wanted to ask you, obviously we're housing providers, wanted to talk to you about housing. What policies or approaches do you think you would support to ensure that residents have access to a diverse, affordable range of housing options? I mean, you talked about the townhouses. We talked about multifamily. What do you think? What type of approaches we need to have to support a broad range of choices for your son, for you and people like you and I that are starting to be those active adults that want a different type of house than what we currently live in?
I think that communication is key. It sounds like a buzzword, but one of the other recommendations that I had not only for planning, but then also a little bit further up the stream is I volunteer also or sit on it's called Jackson County Health Department. It's an INCO lab, and they talk about basically there's two pillars. One is the affordable, the attainable housing, that sort of thing, and then the other is mental health, and because they all factor into public health. The thing is, I think we need to get folks together and start talking, and because I can ask my mother that same question, she's going to have a different response than if I were to ask my son. And so when we are at a point now where whether it's an election discussion or whether it's a discussion that we're going to put together a new charter or a new strategic plan, that is what a strategic plan is for. Now, the key to having a successful strategic plan is to get a diverse group of folks in the room to talk about it. And it is Sheri's opinion that hasn't necessarily happened in the past. Nothing negative about it. It's just that people don't know about it. I just found out that they actually have a committee in place to have those discussions. We've got EDC, we've got a million of those committees, but no one knows about them. No one. And I'm saying no one from my mom, no one to my son, I didn't know about them. So I think when you have the folks in the room, they can start to have that dialogue and say, you know what, I'm a gig Gen X or Gig X or whatever it is. Like my brother, he has no desire to get in the house anymore. He was there, family, he's there, but he loves Lee Summit. That's the whole thing. And he doesn't want to leave. So he wants those options out there. So he put his options on the table and said, this is the best thing for me right now. Now, he's going to be moving into another townhome or villa type situation in a little bit, but still, I think we need to be able to move through those. Just because I'm here does not mean I'm going to be here forever. I want options when I decide in 2 years, in 2 months, in 2 years that I'm going to leave. And I also know that I want to stay here. So I think that's the struggle that folks have is that, if we don't have the inventory, how am I going to move from one particular category to the other? And I think we need to start preparing for that now.
Well, thank you. You touched on economic development before, and as a planning commission member, you said you're not going to get in the way of economic development. But do you have any vision for attracting new employers, supporting existing businesses, and promoting long-term economic growth in Lee Summit?
One of the things I think that the planning department with the city is trying to do is to streamline their processes. It came up in in the city council meeting last night, and that is, let's remove the barriers to access. And I used to do that professionally as well and say, you know what, it takes too much time. Selecting a Medicare plan, for example, selecting an insurance plan, for example, it shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't be that hard. So if you reduce some of the steps that, whether it's realtors or developers that have to take, let's do this. Why do I have to go back? Why do I have to wait 3 to 4 months after a PDP or preliminary development plan? Why do we have to do that? So I think getting people at the table that understand the current state, the bureaucracy, because that's what it is, and then say, hey, well, can we eliminate this step, this step, this step to make it more attractive to employers? I keep hearing that, employers love coming to, businesses love coming to Lee Summit. I don't see that. I don't, because there's too many hoops that they have to jump through, right?
Sheri, I will agree with you 1000% as a small business owner in this community that our bureaucracies are a little out of control, and it doesn't feel friendly to small business owners to try and do business with the city. So I love what I hear you saying. I think that it's gotten to the point where Main Street has a real hard time competing with giant corporate America because we don't have an army of lawyers that we can send down to City Hall to solve all these problems for us.
Right.
So I absolutely love what I hear you saying right now.
We have the land. We do. We've got opportunity. I even proposed that, that stadium that's over there across the state line, that could come over here too, but they don't want to hear that. But we have land. We do. And that's one thing that I haven't necessarily noticed in Lee Summit. We don't have office space. Am I missing that? there's not, I don't see a lot of that. So that's also.
I mean, I think that area over around Unity, I think that was the vision over there. It just hasn't taken off. And I don't know why it hadn't taken off. But again, I want to be careful that we're not trying to be Overland Park light, right?
Right,
And
right.
it feels like over the last 5 or 10 years that we've just tried to chase what Johnson County does instead of being uniquely Lee Summit.
Mhm.
I think for those of us who came here, and this is no slam because I own a company in Kansas also,
Mhm.
but they're different communities and they're different
They
cultures.
are.
And my wife and I planted roots in Lee Summit to raise our family here
Mhm.
because of what Lee Summit offered. If we wanted to be in Johnson County, we would have moved to Johnson County.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. I agree. I think that it will take people from, if there is such a thing, both sides, a diverse set of individuals. And when I say diversity, I mean, let's be honest, it's race, it's age, it's socioeconomic, as well. It is education and profession too.
It's all our community.
It is
yeah.
absolutely it. And we are growing. What was the last? It was 107,000, and I have no doubt we're going to cap out, upwards of 115 or 120. So what does that mean? One of the things I haven't looked into is what is the occupancy rate at some of the, honestly, the multifamily, the apartments. I thought it was sitting at like 85% or something like that. So they're coming and they're renting.
Yeah, well, and honestly, in our industry, if you're at 80% or higher, that's considered really good.
Mhm.
Most lenders, when they lend on multifamily, are basing it on 80% number. So if they're at
Well, don't quote me
83%,
on that. I think
yeah,
that's what the last I heard,
all right.
but that's without the new development that's going up too, though. So
Well, and there's new development everywhere right now,
yeah.
especially over on that 64086 side,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
over in between 86 and you. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just one giant. I mean, heck, it's everything, right?
Exactly.
But we've got good restaurants now, and we don't have to drive to Independence or Overland Park to have a decent meal because we're getting good food, right? I mean, it's just we can complain about one piece, but then we love the fact that we've got great places to eat and shop now too. So.
Well, the other issue down the street for me, we've got a soccer complex. So folks are saying that's great. We don't have to drive to, Schweitzer anymore for our kids to play soccer. We have approved another fitness soccer facility that's not too far from Paragon, as well. There are challenges there because it has a dome and there's a neighborhood near there, but um, it's I think we want that. What is it? The residual or the multiplier effect where folks live here and they stay here and they spend their money here and it stays in Lee Summit instead of having to go to Kansas City or Overland Park. I think that's what everybody's aiming for. But again, we have to find a balance to do that. And I think the best way to find a balance of that is to open up in the planning and from a strategic standpoint.
Yeah. Well said.
Sheri, I've got one final question. I'm going to
Sure.
turn it over to James. As Lee Summit continues to grow, so do infrastructure needs, transportation, utilities, public services. Those all remain a significant concern. How would you prioritize and address the needs as a council member? With
Well,
growth comes problems sometimes.
um, a couple ways. I mean, public safety, because one of the things you have to get ready and stay ready, right? And honestly, as population grows, public safety needs to be on point. You don't know you need them until you do. So that's one thing. And I say to keep them trained and ready. And to whatever extent I can support that, and I have supported. I think I was endorsed by the police and fire, but my father was a police officer, so I was kind of a little biased in that particular situation. But we have to do that. The other thing from a physical energy infrastructure, we have parts of the city that there is no infrastructure. There's not. So what happens is, I think you all know, is that we want to develop that land, but the developers are saying, no, we don't want to do it because there's no infrastructure. And then we want to give them, concessions to develop the infrastructure so that we can, have the houses there. That's a sticky point to me, because when you start talking about incentives and CIDs and TIF and that sort of thing. I struggle with putting something out there for 35 years. That makes no sense to me. And that's what they're starting to do, right? You know, that's too long. That's longer. That's more than a generation for me. So again, sometimes we have to say no. People don't like to do that because they're like, oh, you know, we need to get the business in. That's absolutely true. But sometimes we have to say no. It's you know, it's going to hit us from a tax standpoint. And I think one of the things that I'm thinking that I can bring to the table is to look at those numbers. I mean, I've had to, you know, run budgets and that sort of thing for programs before, but sometimes we just need to look at that and say, that's not going to work for us. And if that means, you know, we need to scale it back to 10 years, the state of Missouri is in the process of, you know, potentially eliminating state income tax, right? So what does that mean? I need people to understand what that means. Potentially that's going to increase sales tax and tax on services, which if you're looking at, you know, developer concessions and that sort of thing, that's going to impact that too. So yeah. I think people need to understand the total picture, and we just haven't. I know in planning, we usually don't have an opportunity to do that until things get heated. So to the extent that we can get in front of that and, you know, be proactive in that, I think that works.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Sheri, I just have a couple more questions for you. I am curious, how do you feel as though your personal and professional experiences have equipped you to serve as a council member?
I started out my professional career working, running projects as a project manager. And a project manager is someone who has an end goal, and they have to go through a number of steps and milestones before a project is complete. In doing so, you have a number of team members that do not report to you. And they also have their own jobs, if you would, and their own reporting dotted line. So we used to call it, you know, from PM standpoint, herding cats. So I got to talk to, you know, the folks at, you know, the water department. I have to work with the folks at, you know, planning. I have to work with city council. I have to work with city staff and that sort of thing. So I think I am extremely well versed in and actively too in bringing those different groups with those different disciplines together for a common goal to make a decision to move forward. So in that respect, I think I can do that, because if you've seen our city council, it's like this, and that's fine. That's what it should be. The other thing I can bring to the table is fiscal responsibility. I have been in charge of budgets for programming, whether it was marketing for, I'll say for the VA, for example, or implementing a new system, and reviewing, you know, contracts and contractual responsibility negotiations as well. So far, I think the last, I think it was about 32 million. And then it was stopped for congressional reasons and that sort of thing. So from a resource planning standpoint, I've had to do that as well. And, you know, the other thing, I also see the impact. I saw the impact of COVID, for example, that had on small businesses. I tried to get a small business, you know, consulting business off the ground. And during a time when we have, you know, we've got a volatile economy right now, and we have to learn or understand how to play in that particular field while being strategic in what we're going to do going forward. So financially, I think I have that. Now, mentally, I could not do any of this if my son was in the house with me. I say that. I just couldn't. So I have the time, and fortunately, I have the desire to do it.
Well, very much appreciate that response. I will tell you, as a former county employee myself, the herding cats analogy was very apt, although it's more like herding buffalo or alligators. So just be sure you know what you're getting yourself into there. I have one final question for you, though. Sure. So Lee Summit is certainly one of our larger marketplaces within our footprint for the state of Missouri. We have hundreds of members who live and work in that community. When they're heading to the polls on April 7th, what would be your message to them? Why should they cast their ballot for you?
I think they should cast their ballot for me, not because of what Sheri necessarily believes in, because I don't believe I'm going to be sitting on city council saying, Sheri wants this, Sheri does this. My ballot is and my tagline is, I'll work for you in District 2. And I will take whatever concerns you have. And I think communication works both ways. And I think that's not what we're getting now. So if you have an issue, come to me. If I have an issue, I'll go out into the community. I am definitely representing the folks not only in District 2, but Lee Summit, because I think it's something that they've asked for, and many folks that I've talked to don't feel they've been represented, or heard. I guess that's the other thing. So I think I can provide that. I can provide, the pendulum swings, full. I've been a parent. I am a parent. I've been a business owner. I'm a homeowner. I'm also a landlord, if you would, in Kansas City as well. So I think I have at least experience, and also I have the ability to go in and work with different types of individuals and departments, if you would, because I've had to do it. And I think that's what I bring to the table.
Really appreciate the response. It sounds like you're going to be trying to build coalitions
that
lead by listening to those in the community, which I'm hoping that would also include realtors.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It has to. I mean, people move to Lee Summit for a reason. And one of the, I think me included, right? One of the reasons is realtor. And actually, I think the data and the information that you all bring to the table as well, because there have been a number of situations where developer and the realtors have said, here's what it looks like. And that's the other thing. I'm data driven. So tell me what it was like, in 1980, and tell me what it's like in 2026. And then we can start planning to see how we're going to move into, 2030 and beyond.
That's great. David or Jeff, do you guys have any final questions?
I don't. Sheri, do you have any questions for us? Anything that you'd like to ask us before we get off the call?
I don't think so. I when I was looking at your organization, and I've been involved with several realtors, and I was going to call them and go, well, what is this group? I've never heard, because actually we usually just interact with, the individual realtors. And I have had the pleasure and fortunate to be able to interact with many, not only just in Lee Summit, but of course, across the state line. So appreciate everything you all do, and really paid attention to, I guess, a couple of years ago when, some of the rules changed, if you would, as to how you work or interact with, I'm just going to say, prospective home buyers and or sellers. So always keep that.
Well, Sheri, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, always feel free to use us as a resource. Reach out anytime with any questions you might have, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Perfect. Thanks. Have a great day. And sorry, apologize for the Zoom issues.
Appreciate that. Take care.
All right.